Many years ago in the 1950s, surgeons began implanting plastic mesh into patients for hernia repairs, as they wanted to create a stronger, longer lasting fix. Before mesh, they used a patient's own tissue or over-stitching. Hernia can still be fixed like this today. In the late 1960s, a gauze sling was trialled to fix women's incontinence, but it caused problems, so did not continue. In the 1990s, Ulf Ulmsten developed a plastic mesh sling. In 1996, it was launched. The idea was sold to Johnson & Johnson Ethicon for $25 million. Ulmsten was promised an extra $400,000 if he could provide research to show the mesh slings were safe. The meshes were never tested on humans, just dogs, sheep and rats who could not speak of the pain, nerve damage or loss of sex life it could cause. Companies used aggressive marketing tactics to sell the mesh as the new gold standard of care. Women were the human guinea pigs. 2 years later, in 1998, a sling called Protogen was withdrawn because of safety concerns, but by then it was too late. In the 2 years since launching, other mesh kits had been approved in a regulation system known as substantial equivalence in Europe or the 510(k) route in America. That means new devices can be passed easily because something similar is already being used by patients. No clinical trials are needed beforehand and no studies afterwards to monitor safety. The risks include chronic pain, nerve damage, loss of sex life, water infections for life, leg pain, some left in wheelchairs, joint pain, fibromyalgia, allergic reactions, skin rashes, and stomach bloating. In a lawsuit in 2013 against Bard, the company admitted it didn't think it necessary to test the mesh on humans. Then in 2014, Bard was accused of using substandard plastic resin to make their slings. In 2014, mum Linda Battiste took on health giant J&J Ethicon and won. Jurors agreed her TBTO mesh sling was defectively designed and awarded her $1.2 million. J&J appealed. Linda died of cancer in 2015, having never seen a dime. Her family had to fundraise to pay for her funeral. The makers knew there were problems, but they kept them quiet. In 2016, mesh maker Boston Scientific was accused of using counterfeit substandard plastic resin from China to make their slings. In the UK, a mesh sling tape to treat incontinence cost the NHS £1,330. It takes 20 minutes to implant and the woman is home in a day. 2 alternative surgical fixes take up to 4 hours with a 3-night stay in hospital. But nobody is looking at the long-term problems, which end up costing more. The average time for complications to show is 2 to 4 years. There are few long-term studies and no national registers in any country, so many women go unrecorded as suffering. In the UK, hospital episode statistics only log women who go into hospital for treatment of mesh problems. Women who go back and forth to their doctor for pain medication or are told the mesh implant has nothing to do with their pain do not show up in statistics. Mesh is a bigger problem than PIP breast implants and metal-on-metal hips. It is the biggest women's health disaster since the morning sickness drug thalidomide. The reason women have stayed quiet for so long is that incontinence and prolapse are embarrassing to talk about. It is hardly dinner party conversation. Passive smoking used to be ridiculed, but now look at opinions on tobacco. The same will happen with surgical mesh. One day, the medical profession will look back in horror that plastic mesh was inserted into patients. Surgical mesh has been called the gold standard to fix women's pelvic health problems. However, it has devastated lives. It's time to sling the mesh. Join Sling the Mesh on Facebook or Twitter at Mesh Campaign. This is not the end.